Hey guys, Jake Carlson here, host of the Modern Leadership Podcast. Are you ready to focus on amplifying your leadership superpowers? Let's go! Welcome, my friends, to the Modern Leadership Podcast. As always, I am Jake and excited to be with you today. Today, I want to talk about that grumpy little guy in your head. At least he is in my head. You know who I'm talking about. That voice sabotaging your efforts, beating on your confidence, and discouraging any future attempt at success. I'm talking about doubt. We all experience, and today I want to dive into the hidden costs of doubt and what we can do to silence him or her. And to do that, I've invited a new friend to the Modern Leadership Podcast, Mr. Hendon, to join us. Aaron is a master in the Seattle real estate market with bundles of awards and tons of success for his clients. He recently published his latest book, Shortchanged by Shortcuts, 44 Surprising Ways People Rip Themselves Off when buying or selling their home, which we will talk about. But I have to take you back to the college days. You're going to love this. Aaron grew up in New York and received a fine arts degree from Purchase College in New York, which he says made him eligible to work in the food services industry. Aaron, I love this. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Jake. Thanks for having me on.
You know, it's going to be a great conversation. I got to tell you why I love this. This fine arts degree from Purchase College. I got a philosophy degree, which I often say means that I was eligible for more education. And so I had to go on to graduate school. And so I had to chuckle when I saw that. So with your fine arts degree, you headed off to the sprawling metropolis of Albuquerque, New Mexico, and you did the unimaginable. You opened a real New York bagel shop right there in Albuquerque. And I got to have this story. Tell me about this. What drove the Albuquerque decision?
Well, like every man who graduates college, the fundamental choice was live at home with my parents or move to Albuquerque with my girlfriend. And not much of a choice, Jake. Really not much of a choice, So what drove the decision to get to Albuquerque was a woman.
Well, and then you go to Albuquerque and you say to yourself, you know what we need here? We need New York style bagels. Well, how did that brainstorm happen?
Yeah, that really didn't happen that way. It happened this way. I was waiting tables, like I said, an artist, and got a photographer, and got about 3/4 of the way done building and designing my studio, loft, dark room, and just stopped working on it. Just stopped. And I thought, all right, well, maybe this isn't really what I'm going to do. I'm a young man and I'm not, I was excited, and then I just stopped building it. And around that time, the baker in the restaurant I was waiting tables at had quit, and I had started baking for the restaurant, which I had learned to do in art school, which is actually not that uncommon. So anyway, I could bake bread, and I was baking bread for the restaurant, and I thought, oh, maybe I should open a business. And, because waiting tables is unlikely to provide the lifestyle to which I'd like to become accustomed. And I thought maybe I should open a business. And my father had been an entrepreneur and, gave up a career in executive, C-suite career to start his own business. So it had sort of been in the background of my, the context of my life was being an entrepreneur was an acceptable, desirable thing. So I started looking around for a bakery, so I thought I would start a bakery. And I was a bread baker. I never made bagels. But when I went to shop for equipment, a bagel shop had closed, and all their equipment was for sale for pennies on the dollar. And I thought, okay, well, here's all this equipment. Maybe I should start making bagels. And that's how it happened. So then I started, that's how the bagels came about. And, I wound up hiring, it's sort of a long story, but just to cut it short, I wound up hiring a guy that had run a bagel shop near my house in New York. I found him in Phoenix, flew him out to Albuquerque, and he spent a week with me teaching me how to make New York bagels. And I can tell you today, Jake, if there's anyone listening that was in Albuquerque from 1990 to 1999, they absolutely, without a doubt, know Fred's Bread and Bagel. And it was the real deal. It was 100% the real deal in terms of bagels.
What an incredible story. And, I like that you brought us back and told us, look, your father had been an entrepreneur. And so it was kind of baked into you a little bit. You'd seen that baked in. See how I made that bagel reference?
Ah, oh, look at you.
Yeah. See, this is the kind of podcast we're having. So one thing that really jumped out to me that I think is hilarious about this story is I just heard an interview with the founders of Ben and Jerry's, Ben and Jerry's ice cream, Ben and Jerry. And they talked about how they wanted to start a bagel shop, but they went to buy the equipment. And when they did, the bagel equipment was too expensive. So they bought ice cream equipment, and the rest is history. And here you are buying bagel equipment. Now, how was, it sounds like kind of a fun story, right? But I want to take you back to that time and some of the struggles that you had. And the reason I want to do this is because you talk a lot about doubt and the hidden costs of doubt. And I got to tell you, I'm thinking about myself coming out of college, a fine arts degree. I'm moving to Albuquerque, a place that I don't know anything about, people I don't know. I'm starting my photography store. I move on to this bagelery, and I got to tell you, doubt is creeping up in my head. So let's go back there and talk about that a little bit.
Well, I don't think doubt is just part of the game. Doubt, I think it's a mistake to pretend that you're going to lose doubt. I think confidence is, certainly the other side of the hand of doubt. And I think it's similar to, analogous to courage and fear. You could certainly say doubt and fear are cousins, at least, if not closer, relatives. And courage and confidence are related in the same way. And, you don't need courage where there is no fear, right? Courage is, it doesn't come up. It doesn't come up. It doesn't actually exist without fear. There is no context for courage, and without doubt, there's no context for confidence. You don't need confidence in a context that's absent doubt. So doubt is just sort of like a flag for, here's where I could generate confidence. And I think doubt is, I think the game, to a large extent, many of the things that we could talk about, doubt is automatic. Doubt is like the default. I think we all default to doubt. And we all look at people like Richard Branson or whoever you admire, Gary Vaynerchuk, or I don't know, whoever the listeners admire as a leader. And we look in their direction, and what we see is confidence. But what we don't see is the natural amount of doubt that's in the background for those people. And you can't have anyone on this show. You can't talk to any leader who's hasn't dealt with or doesn't constantly deal with doubt. Doubt is, part of the game. It's just literally part of the game.
And I would agree with you 100% on that. Everybody has doubt. Even when Michael Jordan gets the ball at the end of the game, of course, some of our listeners don't even know who I'm talking about, but Michael Jordan gets the ball at the end of the game. Even sometimes in his mind, he says, boy, am I going to make it this time around? All of us face this doubt. And so I want to talk with you a little bit, Aaron, about what are the hidden costs of this doubt? What are some of the things that it creates in our lives that cause, obstacles and trials that we maybe don't need?
Yeah, well, I think anytime that you give in to, the hidden costs of doubt are like the opportunity costs. You don't see the things that you don't do. You never deal with the costs of the things that didn't happen. Really, they're just opportunities didn't happen. So it's hidden from the perspective of, you're never going to see what could have, had I not, look, I doubted my ability to be an artist, that I doubted my ability or my commitment to become, fully a fine artist and follow that path. And, and I wound up being a baker and opening the bakery and followed that path down. Right. But the hidden cost of doubt is whatever now is missing in the world in terms of the art that I could have made. The world got those bagels and got everything that came since then, but it didn't get the art that I could have made. And I think there's always the opportunity to examine, when you're going to, I don't want to say sell out, but when you're going to
maybe give up a little bit or change directions.
You're going to give in to doubt, when you're going to, if it's not labeled as doubt, if it's, if you're not willing to acknowledge it as doubt, and that's what you're doing, it's worthwhile to just examine, all right, well, what is going to be missing from the world? What's going to be missing from my life, and what's going to be missing from the world if I go down this path from doubt?
And you have to intentionally do this. This is something that you have to put on your mind, because as you've been talking about, the cost of doubt, the hidden cost, it doesn't manifest itself because we don't see it. We have to intentionally take the time and think about, boy, if I don't go down this path, what could be the potential results? It's easy for us to calculate the negative consequences of taking action. Sometimes it's harder to calculate. Actually, always it's harder to calculate the hidden costs of inaction. And so that leads to my next question for you, which is this: why is there never a right time to do anything in your life?
Well, that's a great question, because and it fits right into this conversation, right? It's really the next conversation. And if you just want to look at the divergence in the road between artist and entrepreneur at that moment in my life, as a young man, and that has been plays out literally every day in a multitude of ways for everybody, right? Is, could I have made the choice to double down and finish the dark room and been an artist? Absolutely. Could I have, taken the path that I took? Obviously, I could have. The question is, which was the right path? And I think I don't think that is the question. I think that's the question that people are looking to get answered, like the right path.
That's what's going on in their mind.
Yeah, I don't think it's they is the right pronoun for that. I think it's our. That's what goes on in our mind. There's no one who doesn't have that. And I think it's really important for people to realize that there's no one who doesn't have that. That's part of what it is to be a human being. No one doesn't have that. The game isn't to get beyond that. The game's not to make that go away. The game's not to have that disappear. That's not going to disappear. The game is, okay, I see that's a question that comes up automatically, but what's a better question? What's a question because if I'm going to ask the question, is this the right time? The answer is going to be yes or no. And what are you basing it on? There's going to be constant turmoil, constant upset, constant, it's the right time if you say it is. Anyone who has children, Jake, you have kids?
Yeah, I have 3 of them.
Was it the right time?
I don't know if it's still the right time, to be honest with you.
Exactly. There's no one who has kids that hasn't dealt with, is this the right time to have kids?
So we timed it perfectly, right?
Yeah. Is it the right time for me? I think the question is it the right time, like there's a universal answer for it out there that I'm looking for. I think the question is it the right time for me? Is this the right time for me? Is this right now? And then you get to just look to see if it is, it is. And if it's not, it's not. And who are you asking? Well, is it the right time for me? You should be asking you.
Let's pull on this just a little bit here because, arguably people would say, look, you had moved out to Albuquerque. You'd set up this photography studio. You got halfway done. Are you all in? Are you invested in it? Or have you gone past the point of no return? And of course, you found an opportunity that led in a different direction. The question isn't, why is there never a right time? To me, I think the better conversation that we're having is, when do we know we have the right opportunity? How do we know that starting the photography studio would not have been a better route for you as opposed to going down the bagel route?
Right. And I don't think that's an answerable question. And do you know what I mean? I don't think it's a bad question. I just think that.
So do you think we need to experiment a little bit about it? Like try different things?
Well, I think you don't get hung up on getting an answer, like I'm getting the right answer. Because look, you could easily argue that was a mistake. You could you go back and look through all the different things in your life and look, what if I had not married this person? Or what if I had gone on that date? Or what if I had taken that opportunity? Or what if I made a right there and not a left? What if I gone to college or studied a little harder? You could rehash history all the time and look to see were those the right ways, but they're not valuable questions. In the moment, I think it's a good question, but I think it's the asking of the question versus the finding of the answer that's of value.
And being open to the new direction as it comes down the path, being able to, take on new opportunities, to see the transition opportunities and go down those. And so
just one more thing, just one more thought on that. And then not being attached to, is this the right answer? And there we go back to doubt, right? Not being attached to, is this the right answer? It's an answer, and I'm going to try it out, just like you said. Like we're going to experiment with it, because there is no right answer. There is no right time. I'm doing this now. I'm dating this person now. I'm getting married now. I'm going to have the kids now. I'm going to go, you know what? I'm not going to make the dark room. I'm now going to go start this business. It's what I'm doing now.
And my thought on this is, as you're talking about this is really interesting because we can look in the rear view and we can see, look, Aaron, you had your bagel shop in Albuquerque for 9 years. Then you decided that you had your run. You sold the bagel shop, successful, doing over $1 million annually in business, which, by the way, that's a lot of bagels.
It was a lot of bagels.
Move your family or move yourself up to the Pacific Northwest. You're up there in the Seattle area. You completely switch gears and directions. You go with this real estate. And so my question for you is, as we look in the rear view, it's easy to see that we've made the right decisions going down this path. Let's get rid of the bagel shop. Let's go do real estate for a little while. But the rest of us are looking in the front windshield, and it's not as easy to look through the front windshield and kind of make these decisions. And so one thing I want our listeners to understand is, and maybe you're saying this, maybe you're not. Let's have this conversation, but you're not saying just do everything, just try everything. You're not saying go and just never make a commitment and never dial in and work hard, because I guarantee for you to get to $1 million annually in bagels, you were working your butt off. You were working all the time. And so is there a difference between let's try everything and see what fits versus let's dial in and do something we know we've got momentum with?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, Jake. And I think it's one of those things where you say one thing like, okay, there's no right answer. Okay, there's just what's ever right now. Yeah, and you say that, and then it's easy to then start making conclusions that then means try everything or just don't get committed, or, and it doesn't. You got to keep that as a distinct conversation. So there's a distinct conversation called there's no right answer. Then when you do come up with the right answer for you, right, then there's an opportunity to throw yourself fully into it. Why? Because doubt's no longer the thing. I think the thing that keeps us from being committed is that, I'm only going to put my toe in and see. Right? No, I'm fully committed. Let's get this fully committed. This is the right answer for me, and I'm going to give it everything I got until it becomes obvious that this was not the right thing, or it becomes obvious that this was. But I'm giving it everything I got until I get to say it's not the right thing. I get to say right? So you're playing full out inside whatever you said, and I think it's useful once you're no longer wrapped around the axle of doubting yourself. You've given yourself the permission to choose, and now you've chosen. You give yourself over fully to that. There'll be a time. It'll show up. It will show up when it's complete. It really will show up when it's time to move on. If you've given yourself fully to it and you're not entertaining, like literally, well, not literally, but figuratively entertaining doubt, like, people bring it over to lunch and they sit down and they have dinner with their doubt. They coddle their doubt and they let's have a glass of wine with my doubt. No, you're just not entertaining your doubt. Your doubt is like, oh yeah, you're high doubt. You can keep moving. No reason for you to stay tonight. And I'm playing full out in whatever it is, in the bagel shop, playing full out. And when it was complete, it was really time to be complete. It was really obvious, like, okay, this is now. And it showed up like a choice, like, okay, do I want to keep doing this? Is this something I'm going to commit to again? Is this something I'm still committed to? Is this something that I love? Can I sell it? What can I do? I'm moving on. Next thing, and then you fully do that. Give yourself permission to fully throw yourself into whatever's next.
And I think that's so important, that fully distinction that we just talked about. Now, I got to ask you a question about being a football fan. Are you a football fan?
I am a football fan.
All right. This is a difficult question for me to ask you because I know you live up in Seattle, so I'm assuming that your team happens to be a team that I don't like. But as you were talking, one thing that came to my mind is I was thinking about these running backs, right? And a running back goes in the game, they go into the huddle, the play comes in from the coach or from the quarterback, and they know the play. But as soon as that ball is hiked and it's handed off, they have to make decisions at a momentary notice to see when to pivot, when to spin, when to jump, when to roll, what hole to hit. And it's all based on circumstances that present themselves after the snap of the ball. And I think as you were talking, what came to my mind is that with bagels and with photography, with schooling, and now with real estate, we're like the running back. The play has been called. We are going full on. We're taking that ball and we're going to the touchdown. Now, are we going to have to jump, pivot, switch to the side? Yes, along the way. But because we know what we're doing, we're going to be ready when that lineman or linebacker gets right in our way. And so that's why I wanted to bring that up. Does that make sense?
It does. And if we're going to run with the analogy fully, and I'm happy to, and I really do apologize for the metaphor, but, it's an opportunity to go beast mode on that thing. It's just an opportunity because the thing about, if we're going to get the metaphor fully in Seattle, the thing about Marshawn Lynch that made him like my favorite human being pretty much is, he ran through people's faces. That was his thing. Ran through their effing face. That was his quote. Like, I run through their face, and I'm going to run through their face until they get tired of me running through their face and they just let me through. And that was his game plan.
And it worked for him.
It worked. It was like, that worked, and that's the way, that's committed. He got committed. He was like, snap the ball and I'm going through. And you can get in my way if you want, but that is totally your problem. I'm going to make that your problem. And if you took on, I think the running back metaphor is brilliant, in a lot of ways, because you need to pivot, you need to cut, you need to know when to do it. And there's going to be obstacles, they're trying to get you, they're coming at you, right? And you're up for that challenge. I love the metaphor. It's a great metaphor.
Awesome. So now we're up in Seattle and you're working in the real estate business. And I want to talk to you about the hidden lie behind knowledge is power. Now, you've written a number of books. I believe you're on your third, maybe even your fourth book. So it's not that you don't believe in knowledge and you don't believe that knowledge has power, but let's talk about this hidden lie behind knowledge is power.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of emphasis on understanding, on thinking, on knowledge, right? Look, here's the hidden lie, right? If no one listening to this podcast doesn't know how to lose weight. There's no way you don't know how to lose weight, and there's no way people don't know how to balance their budget. It's not a question. It's not that people don't know how to do those things. Losing weight is eat less calories than you put, than you burn. It's really not. It's not like a question. It's not like, but there's $1 billion a year diet industry, but nobody doesn't know what to do. But there's $1 billion a year diet industry, and yet everyone knows what to do, and yet they sell $1 billion a year. If you can't find the evidence or knowledge isn't power in that, I don't know what to tell you, because it doesn't matter. You already know what to do. Action is power. Acting produces results, not knowledge. Acting. Now, do you need to know? Eat less than? Yes, you do. But that's the simplest part of the whole equation. But people become knowledge junkies so they can avoid act.
And that's absolutely huge. People become knowledge junkies to avoid action. And I see that even in my own life, Aaron. This is sometimes on this podcast, we have a confessional. This is a confessional. I read a lot of books. I read about a book a week. Voracious reader, 3x speed on my Audible, going through a ton of books. But that doesn't matter. Who cares how many books I can read and how many books I do read if there's no action, no implementation of what I'm reading?
Yes, that's right. That's right. That's the lie, is that people are like, I'm going to listen to a lot of podcasts and I'm going to get a lot of information and then I'm going to wait for the results or whatever, right? Versus, okay, today, here's the 5 actions I'm going to take that if I took these actions, they would predictably move me closer to my goal. Success is a drip campaign. It's a drip by drip campaign. Every overnight success you've ever read about has 1 million hours underneath it. There's no overnight success.
And so when I think of podcasting and I think of I'm a podcaster, I listen to a ton of podcasts and I record a ton of podcasts. In fact, I believe this is around my 200th episode that I've recorded on the podcast, on multiple podcasts that I've been on. And it's not the knowledge of the podcast that I'm looking for. It's the inspiration, or it's that glimmer of idea that will cause action. It's the push in the right direction. And so we can get too overwhelmed. We can get too time consumed with how much, podcasting or books that we're reading. But what we need to do is not cut them completely out of our lives. Find the ones that push you in the right direction and then double down on those. Get them to push you towards action and then have action, complete your action. All right, let's shift gears to talk about one last question before we go on to my favorite section, which is the learning from leaders. And that is, what's the difference between thinking and having thoughts?
Well, I think, I start with I think, right? Thinking almost always requires a dialogue. Thinking almost always requires a dialogue with another person. And I don't know that that's clear for people. Having thoughts is easy. You have a trillion thoughts a day.
They're popping in right and left. They're going
in
off.
everywhere.
Yeah.
And when people say, I want to think about it, mostly what they mean is, I'm going to go home and have thoughts about something.
Yes.
Right? They're going to talk to themselves. They're going to talk to themselves. That's what we call thinking. We call thinking talking to ourselves. Whatever our little internal machinery says to itself. And you go lie down at the end of the night and the little voices are going nuts, right? Sometimes there's a committee. But that's not thinking. That's having thoughts. That's all automatic. It's just there, right? And there's nothing wrong with having thoughts. Sometimes you have miraculous thoughts. I've had miraculous thoughts and breakthrough thoughts and thoughts that have led to many, many things. But none of that's really thinking. That's just having thoughts. And there's a lot of time for that. You go for a walk on the beach and you have thoughts.
Or the shower. That's where we all have thoughts, right?
I have tons of thoughts in the shower, right? And some of them wind up being useful and some of them wind up being nothing. But that's not thinking.
Yeah.
That's having thoughts.
So what I'm hearing from you is that thinking has this intentionality behind it, that there's this, you want to accomplish a goal. There's some outcome that you're searching for, and there you put your thought process into effect. You push it on the track and you get to a destination that you're looking for. It's that intentionality that separates thinking from just having thoughts. And I think, Aaron, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's a lot of people out there that are just having thoughts. I mean, they're just sitting on the couch and they're just going through life. And even at their work, they're just in the routine and the mundane. They're having thoughts and they're not thinking because they lack intentionality, which leads to an outcome, which, as we just talked about, is action.
That's correct. And I think, so it's not that there's a lot of people having thoughts. Everyone has thoughts. It's not that a lot of people are sitting around having thoughts. Everyone is sitting around having thoughts. Everyone is. It's a universal phenomenon. That's a human being thing. That's not good people think and bad people have thoughts. No, everyone has thoughts. It's when we can label thinking, when we can actually distinguish between the two, you have some kind of power. You're like, oh, I want to think about this. Good. So that means I'm going to get two other people and I'm going to have a conversation and we're going to talk this out and look at all sides of it. I'm going to look at it from other angles because I want other thinking involved than mine. Because if it's just my thinking, it's thoughts. If it's just me, then it's just thoughting, right? And most doubt and all that inaction and all the trepidation and this fear all comes from thoughts. None of that comes from thinking. You wouldn't be with another person working something out and be left with doubt. You'd be left with clarity about whatever it is that, a business opportunity. Good. You talk that out with three other people. Chances are you're not left with doubt. You're left with clarity. I'm not doing that, or I am doing that. But you'd be left with clarity about it because you had other thinking involved. Otherwise, it's just your thoughting, and your thoughting is universally designed to have you stay safe, stay alive, right? Don't get hurt. Don't look stupid. Don't look bad. That's what your thoughts are designed for.
And it's limited and biased. And so I think this brings us back full circle. We talked about doubt. We started with doubt, the hidden consequences of doubt. And then we've gone all the way through this and we've got to the point where we found that intentional thinking, really active thinking, and then creating action is how we overcome doubt. We gain that confidence and we move on. Terrific conversation. Really enjoy it. I look and I see our time is running a bit low. Before I let you go, my favorite section, learning from leaders. I want to ask you 5 rapid fire questions, kind of get your thoughts on what's going on in the life of Aaron. How about that?
Okay, let's go.
All right. First one.
Speed
round. Book currently on your Kindle or bedside table.
It's called Story Brand, Donald Miller, about how to create a story, a marketing story for your company. I'm on my second listen through on the Audible, and I without a doubt will be on my third listen through this week because it is so strong. It is such a strong book on how to market your business, how to create a marketing message. I'm blown away.
Perfect. I love that. Donald Miller has some tremendous writing, and I love this idea of the story. We talked in the pre-interview just about how important it is to tell stories and talk about stories. I love it. How about the best movie ever made?
That is a tough one. So I'm just going with, I'm either going with Young Frankenstein or Monty Python and the Holy Grail, and I'll take those two to my grave. Either one, you could win with me, and I'd be fine.
I've got to tell you, so we went to Scotland a couple of months ago. We were up at Doune Castle, which is where they filmed Monty Python and the Quest for the Holy Grail. And they actually have a Monty Python tour where you listen to the headphones. You go from room to room and they play the scenes in each room. And all of the castle scenes, whether it was the French castle or the English castle, all of them were filmed in Doune Castle in Scotland. You'll have to get up there and check it out.
I am so there. That is the best news I've ever heard. Love that movie.
By the way, it's free. Once you get there, it's free to go in the castle and check it out. It's awesome.
So great. Thank you so much.
How about your leadership superpower?
Listening from nothing, just listening without my view involved, just listening for people, whatever they're saying.
Well, it's so important, and not just listening to respond, but listening to understand or comprehend. How about a motivational quote, philosophy, or mantra?
I think you know what? For a long time, I thought this was C.S. Lewis, but it's not, and I don't know who it is. But regardless, it's you are. Now you're going to mess it up, but you don't have a soul. You have a body. You are a soul.
There's more to you than just the physical. It's this complete package, which is something that we talk about all the time on this Modern Leadership podcast because we're whole individuals. The outside, the inside, everything we do is who we are. Wonderful. Final question before we let you talk about how we can get in touch with you and learn more about your book is, what is the best business book ever written?
I'm going to go with Good to Great. Jim Collins' Good to Great.
And how can you not? It's such a wonderful book. I love it. It's one of the books that set me on the path to leadership that I'm on now. So I really appreciate that, Aaron. Can't thank you enough for coming on the podcast. Before we let you go, how can we find out more about you? Any last bit of advice? And tell us a little bit about your book that's coming out or just came out.
Yeah, it just came out. Well, I think everything that we talked about is really right from the book. The book is about buying or selling homes, but it everything we talked about interferes with, gets in the way of, people's rational relationship to choosing a real estate agent and buying or selling their home. Doubt, fear, knowledge, inaction, thoughting, all that stuff comes up. And buying or selling a home is the most expensive, most impactful financial transaction of your life. And because most people don't apply rational thought to it, they go about it with in the same methodology, Jake, that they use to choose where to eat dinner. They go to a website, they look for stars on a website. Or they go with the guy that their friend recommends, or they go for the guy that has a lot of signs around the neighborhood. All ways that you would choose where to eat dinner, not how you would choose to sell the most expensive thing you've ever bought. Doesn't make any sense. So that it didn't make any sense bothered me for a really long time. So I wrote a book that really examines the behavioral economics behind the decision-making of people buying or selling homes and how they can avoid those pitfalls. So I wrote a book called Shortchanged by Shortcuts, 44 surprising ways that people rip themselves off when buying or selling their home. And it's designed to really give people a guide on how to approach the most expensive financial transaction of their life in a rational manner. And your listeners can go to rationalrealestate.pro and get access to the book and a free PDF handout called 7 steps to avoiding the wrong agent, finding the right agent. And that'll come free. The book, by the time your listeners get it, it'll be on Amazon. It's on Amazon now, but they'll be on Amazon, and they can go by there and pick up a Kindle or a real version of it. And all my contact information is there. So if they have questions or anything, but the book is written for anyone buying or selling their home in the United States that wants a smarter, safer, more rational method of buying or selling their home.
And we're going to link all that up on the show notes, and can't thank you enough for offering the free PDF. And we want to get a copy of the book. I got to be honest with you, Aaron, I'm a little bit nervous to read it because I just bought a house about 4 months ago, and I'm afraid to see all the mistakes that I made because I'm sure that I made plenty. But we sure appreciate your time and your wisdom coming on the Modern Leadership Podcast. Can't thank you enough and want to wish you the best of days.
Thank you so much, Jake. I so appreciate the opportunity to talk with you. Had a lot of fun.
big thanks to Aaron for coming on the Modern Leadership Podcast. Sure appreciated the chat about doubt. And I started off with this in the intro. I have doubt all the time. Everybody has doubt all the time in their mind. And what is it hindering us from doing? What is it stopping within our lives and within our progression that we're doubting our ability or doubting our opportunity or doubting our conviction or our action? What are the things that are stopping us? What's that doubt that we need to get over to move on? I love the conversation of getting out of the having thoughts process and getting into the thinking process, really being active and intentional in your thinking process with an outcome determined that offers clarity, which puts you on this path to success and fulfillment. Of course, everything's located on the show notes for this episode, how to contact, how to get in touch with Aaron, how to pick up a copy of the book. I know I need to pick up a copy. I'm sure I made a ton of mistakes when I just bought my house recently, but we can get a copy, discount, PDF, everything's over on his website, which I will link to in the show notes, which you can get at jakeacarlson.com/ML53 for episode 53. And until then, I want to wish you the best of days, an even better life. Get rid of that doubt that's hindering you, and stay awesome. Thanks for listening to the Modern Leadership Podcast. You can find me on Facebook at Speaker Jake, on Twitter at Jake A. Carlson, and of course the website, jakeacarlson.com. See you there.